my fair friends. I'm Ruby Ruse. This is Baby Bunny, and welcome to this episode of Fairy Fortunes and a new installment of American Fae. Today we're here to talk about the Illinois Abominable Swamp Slob. Throughout this video I am struggling with some semi-trucks that are traveling to various factories in this area. So you can't hear me as I talk about that this creature was allegedly named by the author John Keel, who is better known for his work of the Mothman prophecies. I have to say that I do really wish that America had better names for these creatures. As the series continues, you'll see that there are quite a few real good ones. Bunny and I are here on location in Illinois, in Cook County, actually not very far from the Indiana border. We are on Torrance Avenue on the very south side of Chicago. The reason that I chose this location is that this is another creature that I have actually come directly into contact with. Now, I do want to take just a moment to reiterate what I talked about in our previous installment of American Fae, which I will have linked down below or in a card above my head, is the difference between cryptozoology and a Fae creature. Now, the difference that I think is that a cryptozoology being is a being that exists on the same plane that I and Bunny are here in right now. This is the regular world that all of us go to work in, go to the grocery store in, and are currently quarantined in the year of 2020. These beings are animals much like ourselves, or rather they would be akin to like a squirrel, a skunk, a coyote. The only difference between a cryptozoology being and another type of animal is that these are beings that are said to be undiscovered animals. For example, the great giant squid was thought to be a being of cryptozoology, and then it was found to be that this was in fact a real creature, and it has now been documented by science. Now, what I would consider a Fae being, a being of the fairy realm, is a being that has some kind of supernatural powers. It could be an interdimensional being, and I do believe that these beings are capable of communication specifically with human animals and probably have their own system of language. So with that out of the way, I would like to share with you why we are specifically on the spot on Torrance Avenue in the city of Chicago near the Indiana border. The reason being is that several years ago, I myself was the passenger in a vehicle that was traveling southbound on Torrance Avenue. It was very late at night. This was about 2 or 3 in the morning, and it was very dark on this road. And it was very quiet that night. The person that was driving and I were very quiet. We were not talking. And all of a sudden, I saw a creature walking across the road. Now, this being was at least 6 feet tall, if not 8 feet tall. It resembled a little bit like a gorilla. It had very, very long arms, but it was clearly walking on 2 very powerful legs. Now, I did not think this was a typical Bigfoot type creature because it did not fit any of the Bigfoot creature-like descriptions that I had ever seen, because it had a bit of a pig-like snout, and it had ear flaps that came down and were very floppy. So these ear flaps from its head were very long, somewhat rabbit-like, but not like Bunny's, where Bunny has his ears upright. This being had ears that were out like this. And as it was sauntering across the road, because it was very casually walking from one side of the road that was going from the west side of the street to the east side of the street, in this very area that we are in now, it looked at the car, it saw us, and you could see in its eyes that it recognized that we were in a human vehicle. And it looked at us, and it had a moment on its face where it was like, what should I do? It was not afraid, it was just trying to ascertain what it should do. And it decided very clearly, there seemed to be a shrug of its shoulders, and it just continued to saunter across the road. It didn't even pick up its pace, it just casually walked across the road. Another interesting thing about this creature is that it seemed very ethereal in appearance. It seemed to have a type of bioluminescence to it. It had like a greenish or whitish sheen to it. And when I saw this being, I thought to myself, I am half asleep. I'm experiencing a dream. I am not quite awake and I'm not quite asleep, and I'm experiencing an in-between dream. And that is what that is. That is not that is not something that I'm really seeing with the mundane eyes that I possess in this car. This is not anything other than a dream. And just as I had decided that, my partner took a breath and said, "What was that?" So it was very clear to me that the woman that I was driving with, my co-worker at the time, had also seen this being and saw that it was a 6 to 8 feet tall creature that was walking on 2 legs with very long arms, the floppy ears that I described, and the very prominent tusks or teeth coming from its mouth. And it was clearly not in any way, shape, or form intimidated by 2 humans in a vehicle traveling down this road in the night. And I had decided that what we had viewed was, in fact, some kind of fairy creature. And so I took a breath to tell her that, and I couldn't really get it out. So I took a breath, and I simply said nothing. And actually, the woman that I was working with, we ran into each other a few years ago. We had a lovely chat, reminisced, caught up, and then just as I was about to leave, we looked at each other, knowing that we both wanted to discuss this incident, and we never did. So when I was doing research on fairy creatures that have been sighted in Illinois, I came across the Abominable Swamp Slob. Now, the difference between this and a classic Bigfoot is that Bigfoot is reported to have very long, hairy fur and is more ape-like or human-like in appearance, or has a very humanoid appearance. It's often been said that it's simply a man in a gorilla suit. And this is clearly not what I saw. This was very much more animalistic. The top half of its body was much bigger, very gorilla-like in appearance, but it did have the impossibly long arms that almost were as long as its legs, but it was clearly not using its arms to move. It was walking only on 2 legs. Once again, as I said, it had the very prominent ears and had tusks or prominent teeth. And what I found is that there are other people that have seen this creature. And as you can see in the background here, there is a swamp at this location. This is a very water-logged area. That is also one of the distinctions between the Abominable Swamp Slob and the Bigfoot being, is that this being is seen in wooded areas, yes, like the Bigfoot, but there seems to be a connection to also having a water source nearby. I did find some other eyewitness accounts of this creature. There was one from 1973. A 4-year-old boy reported to see this being in his own backyard. And what I found very interesting about that description is that he described, this 4-year-old boy described this being as a giant ghost. And I couldn't help but think that the being that I saw definitely had some kind of bioluminescent property, and I was wondering if this 4-year-old boy was describing this creature as a ghost because he did not have the words to articulate that bioluminescent quality to it. Another thing that I found in connection to this being is that many people have reported a very strong odor, a skunk-like or rotting meat kind of smell. Now, I did not experience that with this particular creature, but I was fully enclosed in a vehicle at the time. But I will let you know that in this area of Chicago, many of the residents report this type of smell. It seems to be a permanent odor that exists in this part of Chicago, and now I have to wonder if it's possible that the odor might be caused by a large population of these creatures here. Another report that I found of the Abominable Swamp Slob, once again also from the 70s, is that another person had described this as being a short furred animal and was white or gray in color. Like I said, this was not a long-haired, shaggy, brown, bear-like man in a gorilla suit creature. This was definitely something else. I wasn't even sure that this thing had fur at all. I thought that perhaps it could have even had scales. So, but another person has reported short fur and a white or gray color, which would be consistent with the being that I saw. What's interesting is that Illinois has had many reports of Bigfoot sightings, and I'm beginning to wonder if what they're actually seeing is this creature that has been given the name, the Abominable Swamp Slob. There are many wetland areas around the area of Illinois, so I think perhaps this is a completely different being from a Sasquatch, Yeti, Bigfoot type creature. The being that I saw, I do not think that it is a cryptozoology being. I believe that what I saw was some kind of interdimensional being, a Fae spirit. It had a clear intelligence. It was not afraid. It seemed to know exactly what I was, what my partner was, and the vehicle that we were driving, and it just didn't seem to care. That is another connection to these beings, is that they are said to have absolutely no fear of humans. They are reported to be aggressive, but I did not perceive this being as being aggressive. I felt that he was not intimidated by us and really did not feel threatened, and I think that that is when a being like this will attack, is if they feel threatened. They will certainly go on the attack. But this creature that we encountered was not intimidated and felt no need to attack. That is the thing about fairy creatures that I do want to reiterate, is that, yes, they are very dangerous. They will protect their territories. If they are threatened, they will fight back. But if they are not threatened, they certainly will have no reason to be on the offensive. You should exercise caution if you do want to try and communicate with these beings, want to seek them out, do some investigations on their own. But I do not in any way, shape, or form think that these beings are to be eradicated from this world. The Fae spirits, this is their home too. They might live in an interdimensional type of way, separate from the world that we most predominantly traverse in, but this too is their home. They have every right to live just as much as we do. So I think that they should be, well, I don't think, I'm here to tell you that these beings deserve your respect. Now, as I was researching this creature, I have found that throughout the United States, because I am in the series, I am very determined to bring to you creatures that are indigenous to each of the United States, to show that folklore, fae beings, these are not something of just mythology. This is not just tales that are told. This is a living, breathing part of the world that we live in. I am finding that throughout the United States, the names for these creatures are very much akin to Abominable Swamp Slob. So, and if you think about it, in older times, the more picturesque words that we have for these creatures, they just sound more picturesque because usually they're in another language. Sasquatch, or this Abominable Swamp Slob, has many different names in Native American languages. One of the names that I came across was Atshen. However, I'm not sure that an Atshen is really an Abominable Swamp Slob. I cannot really find a description. I have only been able to ascertain that Atshen is one of the words used to describe a Bigfoot type creature here in the United States. So another creature that this speaks to me of is a Scandinavian troll. However, what's interesting about the word troll is that troll is a bit like a catch-all word. It is akin to the word fae, that is an umbrella term that encapsulates all kinds of different fairy creatures. So in the Fairy Fortunes divination system, I refer to all of the beings that I use on my cards as members of the Fae, but they have their own unique and individual names. So troll is very much like the word Fae. It is an umbrella term that encapsulates many different kinds of liminal spirits, of interdimensional beings, beings that have those communication language skills that I mentioned, and also have some kind of supernatural powers. So, but here in America, most people associate the word troll as a very specific kind of creature that bears a striking resemblance to this Abominable Swamp Slob. And as a matter of fact, as I said, I am here on location at the very spot where I did observe this creature with my own eyes. And if you look behind me, there is a beautiful bridge, and bridges are often associated with trolls. And it might be because these are water-based spirits. So with that in mind, because I want to reiterate that these creatures have every right to exist. They are not here to harm us. They are not here to take over. They are not from another place. They are from this place. It might be an interdimensional place, but it is still, that is the nature of the interdimensions, is that a thing can exist in two separate dimensions and still reside in the same place that we are standing right here and right now. This is their home. We should not go out and hunt these creatures. This is their home. They have every right to be here. They have more right to be here than we do, because this is not a place of human residence. This is the wild, and it belongs to them. So if you would like to learn more about these creatures, one of the things that you can do specifically with trolls is that you can leave an offering of food at bridges, and this is supposed to encourage them to show benevolence towards you. So I have brought with me, now offerings should always be something that is special to you, because you wouldn't want to give somebody a gift of something that you can't stand. So I have here fresh, this is bread that I made myself. It's a little roll, so I have brought fresh baked bread for the troll, or the Abominable Swamp Slob. And one of my favorite things to eat is little peppers. I really love these, and so I thought that would be an appropriate gift to leave for the Abominable Swamp Slob that lives here. Now, if you check my resources down below, you will find that some of the stories that I came across are from the 1970s. I really could not find any stories newer than that. But my story happened not too long ago. This happened about 5 or 6 years ago that I saw this Abominable Swamp Slob. So I'm going to take my gifts and leave them on the bridge for this being. And I'm definitely going to pack up my trash and take it home with me. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode of American Fae. We are here in Illinois with the Abominable Swamp Slob. If you have seen a creature like the one I have described, please leave your story in the comments below, or do contact me. My email address, which is rubyruse@fairyfortunes.com. Also, once the quarantine in 2020 is lifted, Bunny and I will be visiting some other states. So if you have a cryptozoology being that you suspect could be a fae being like I'm talking about, please also give me some information about that being in the comments, or do send me an email so that perhaps I can go and visit your state and report on your fairy being that is indigenous to your area. And with that, have a fairyful day.